The emergency lights flashed red across the great chamber of the Galactic Council. Representatives from 17 different alien species sat in their designated sections, their voices rising in panic and anger. Some spoke in clicks and whistles, others in deep rumbles that shook the air, and a few communicated through colored lights that pulsed across their bodies. The translation devices worked overtime, filling the chamber with a chaos of overlapping languages. Admiral Tai Yang stood in the human observation deck, far from the main floor. He was a tall man with gray streaks in his dark hair, wearing the simple blue uniform of Earth's exploration fleet. His hands gripped the railing as he watched the chaos below. Next to him, Captain Hana studied her data pad, her young face tight with worry. "The Vrexian Dominion has declared war," she said quietly. "They've already taken 3 colony worlds. Now they're moving toward Haven's Gate." Tai Yang knew about Haven's Gate. It was a small farming colony, home to 500,000 people from a dozen different species. Families lived there. Children played in the fields under 2 yellow suns. The colony had no military defenses, just a few orbital platforms with basic shields. "How long until the main council fleets arrive?" Tai Yang asked. Hana's fingers moved across her pad. "The Korthon battle fleet is 3 weeks away. The Melkari Grand Armada needs 4 weeks. The others are even further." "And the Vrexians?" "Their siege fleet will reach Haven's Gate in 5 days. Tai Yang closed his eyes. Mathematics didn't lie. The colony would fall long before help could arrive. On the main floor below, he could hear the council members arguing about jurisdiction, proper protocols, and which species had the authority to respond. Politics moved slowly. War moved fast. A blue-skinned Korthon ambassador noticed the humans in their observation deck. Through the translator, his voice boomed across the chamber. "And what of Earth? Will the humans sit and watch while innocents die?" All eyes turned to the human section. The human ambassador, a small woman named Ambassador Youngsu, stood slowly. "We have a fleet in the region," she said carefully. "Admiral Taeyang's research task force." Laughter erupted from several sections. The Vrexian representative, a massive reptilian creature named Speaker Girok, rose to his full height of 6 meters. His scales gleamed under the chamber lights. "A research fleet?" he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You would send scientists to fight warriors? How very human!" More laughter followed. Even some of the council's friendlier species seemed amused. The humans were known throughout the galaxy as curious explorers and talented scientists, but they had no real military. Their ships were small. Their weapons were basic. They had joined the council only 50 years ago, still newcomers by galactic standards. Taeyang's jaw tightened. He tapped his communication badge. "Taeyang to all human vessels in the frontier sectors, report status." Across the data pad in Hana's hands, ship names began appearing. The Archimedes, a physics research vessel. The Newton, studying exotic particles near a neutron star. The Hawking, conducting experiments on quantum fields. The Einstein, the Galileo, the Curie. 12 ships in total, all designed for science, all lightly armed with basic defensive weapons. "They're not warships," Hana whispered. "Admiral, we can't fight a Vrexian armada. They have 300 ships. Each one outweighs our largest vessel by a factor of 10. Their weapons are designed to crack planets. Ours are designed to take measurements." Taeyang looked at her. "What would you have me do, Captain? Leave those people to die?" "I would have you be realistic. We're scientists, not soldiers." "We're both," Taeyang said. He opened a channel to all 12 ships. "All vessels, this is Admiral Taeyang. Set course for Haven's Gate. Maximum speed. We have colonists to protect." The responses came quickly. Some captains sounded eager, others worried, but none refused. That was the human way. When someone needed help, you helped. The odds didn't matter. On the council floor, Ambassador Youngsu made the formal announcement. Earth commits its available forces to the defense of Haven's Gate. Admiral Taeyang will engage the enemy. The laughter died down, replaced by uncomfortable silence. The Korthan ambassador's skin shifted to a pale blue, a color that indicated sadness in his species. "The humans are brave," he said quietly. "But bravery without strength is just a fast path to death. We honor their sacrifice, but we cannot pretend it will change anything." Speaker Girok's laugh boomed across the chamber. "Let them come. The Vrexian Dominion will add human wreckage to the debris field around Haven's Gate. Perhaps it will serve as a warning to others who think to challenge us." The council session ended in disorder. Representatives filed out, already composing messages to their home worlds. Some spoke of the tragedy of human nobility. Others simply noted the loss of 12 research vessels as an acceptable casualty of war. Taeyang didn't hear any of it. He was already aboard his flagship, the small vessel humans had named the Discovery. It had been built to study black holes and map gravitational anomalies. Now it would lead humanity's tiny fleet into battle against an empire. Captain Hana joined him on the bridge. The other crew members moved efficiently through their stations, running pre-flight checks and calculating jump coordinates. Most of them wore patches from universities and research institutes rather than military medals. Dr. Hyun, the chief physicist, was adjusting his glasses while reviewing sensor configurations. Lieutenant Sora, the weapons officer, looked barely old enough to vote. "All ships report ready," Hana said. "Course is set. We can jump in 30 minutes. Taeyang nodded. He opened a fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Taeyang to all ships. I won't lie to you. The Vrexians are bigger, stronger, and more experienced in warfare. They think we're a joke. They think science is weak." He paused, looking around his bridge at the young faces of Earth's explorers. "But we know something they don't. We know that understanding the universe is the greatest power that exists. We've spent our lives learning how gravity works, how particles behave, how energy and matter interact. The Vrexians built weapons. We built knowledge. Today we're going to teach them the difference." Dr. Hyun looked up from his console and smiled. "Admiral, I've been running calculations. I think I know how we can win this." "I'm listening." The physicist pulled up a holographic display showing the solar system around Haven's Gate. "We can't match their firepower, but we don't need to. We just need to think like scientists instead of soldiers." Around the bridge, crew members began to gather around the display. Ideas flowed. Someone mentioned the gravity lens experiment they'd been running. Another talked about the particle accelerator modifications they'd made last month. Dr. Nari, the xenobiologist, suggested a way to disrupt Vrexian neural patterns using electromagnetic pulses. Captain Hana watched the discussion with growing amazement. This wasn't a military briefing. It was a scientific conference, and somehow that felt exactly right. 30 seconds to jump," announced the navigator. Taeyang returned to his command chair. "All ships prepare to jump. Next stop, Haven's Gate." The 12 small human vessels vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving the Nexus station far behind. Across the galaxy, species watched and waited. Most expected to hear news of the little fleet's destruction within the week. They had no idea what was coming. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Haven's Gate system. Stars stretched back into points of light as the ships slowed to normal space. On the bridge of the Discovery, alarms immediately began sounding. "Contact!" Lieutenant Sora called out. "Multiple vessels, reading 312 Vrexian warships in orbit around Haven's Gate." Taeyang stood from his chair and walked to the main viewport. Even at this distance, he could see the Vrexian fleet. They surrounded the colony world like a swarm of angry insects. Flashes of light marked where their weapons fired at the orbital defense platforms. The colony's shields were already failing. "Get me a clear count of their ship types," Taeyang ordered. Hana worked her console. 60 dreadnoughts, the big ones, 140 cruisers. The rest are destroyers and support ships. Admiral, their flagship alone has more firepower than our entire fleet combined. Dr. Hyun looked up from his science station. We're being scanned. They've detected us. On the communication screen, a message appeared in the common galactic language. It was brief and mocking. Unknown vessels, you are entering a Vrexian military operation. Retreat or be destroyed. We do not waste ammunition on insects. Around the bridge, several crew members tensed. Being called insects stung, even when the insult came from an enemy. Tai Yang simply smiled. Don't respond. Let them wonder. Far across the system, aboard the Vrexian flagship Conqueror's Fang, Commander Girok studied the sensor readings with amusement. His second officer, a younger warrior named Throck, pointed at the display. 12 ships, Commander. Small vessels less than 200 meters each. Their power signatures are weak. I think they're research ships. Girok's laugh rumbled through the command deck. Research ships? Someone sent scientists to a battle? He activated the fleet-wide channel. All vessels continue bombardment of the colony. Ignore the newcomers. They're not worth our attention. In the observation posts scattered across Council space, dozens of species watched through long-range sensors. They had come to witness the siege of Haven's Gate, though most felt sick doing so. Watching innocent colonists die was hard, but the Council's laws were clear. No intervention could occur until the main battle fleets arrived. The appearance of the human vessels caused confusion among the observers. The Corthan monitoring station went quiet as analysts tried to understand what they were seeing. Those are research vessels, said observer Kelmar, his blue skin turning pale with shock. The humans sent their scientists. His partner, a younger Corthan named Solara, checked the readings twice. Confirmed. I'm reading physics labs, biology sections, and astronomical equipment. These aren't warships. They're floating universities. Kelmar activated his emergency channel to the Corthan Council. The humans are going to die. 12 science ships against the Vrexian Armada. It will be a massacre. Back in the human fleet, Admiral Taeyang gathered his captains in a virtual conference. Their faces appeared on screens around the Discovery's briefing room. Captain Minji of the Archimedes looked worried. Captain Doyen of the Hawking was running calculations. The others showed a mix of determination and fear. Status reports, Taeyang said calmly. Captain Minji spoke first. The Archimedes is ready. We've reconfigured our gravity lens array. It was designed to study black holes, but Dr. Hyun's modifications should work for defense. The Hawking is prepared, Captain Doyen added. Our quantum field generators are operating at full power. We've never tested them as weapons before, but the theory is sound. One by one, the captains reported in. Every ship had converted its scientific equipment into something new. Research tools became weapons. Laboratory experiments became tactical advantages. It was desperate and crazy, but it was also brilliant. Remember, Taeyang said, we're not here to destroy the Vrexian fleet. We're here to save the colony. If we can disable enough ships to break their siege, that's a victory. Dr. Hyun brought up a tactical display. The Vrexians are arranged in a standard siege formation. Their dreadnoughts form the outer ring, cruisers in the middle, and destroyers close to the planet. They're focused entirely on the colony. They really are ignoring us. Their mistake, Taeyang said. All ships, move to attack positions. Remember, we're scientists. We observe, we learn, and we adapt. Let's show them what that means. The 12 human ships began moving deeper into the system. They didn't charge forward in a dramatic attack run. Instead, they spread out, taking positions that looked almost random to military observers. The Vrexians continued their bombardment, not even bothering to track the small vessels. Commander Girok received a report from his tactical officer. Commander, the human ships are deploying something. Sensors read them as research buoys and monitoring equipment. Research, boys? Gierok laughed again. They're setting up a science experiment in the middle of a war zone. Humans are even stranger than the reports suggested. Ignore them. Focus on breaking through the last of the colony's shields. But Captain Hana, watching from the Discovery's bridge, smiled for the first time since arriving. All buoys deployed, Admiral. The sensor network is active. Excellent, Taeyang said. Now we can see everything, every ship, every weapon, every power fluctuation in their fleet. Information is power, and we have all the information. Dr. Nari at the biology station studied the data flowing in. I'm reading Vrexian neural patterns from their crew. Their brain activity shows confidence, almost arrogance. They really don't consider us a threat. Let's change that, Taeyang said. He opened a channel to Captain Minji. Archimedes, you're up. Show them what a gravity lens can do. Far to the fleet's left flank, the Archimedes powered up its main array. The ship had been built to study the intense gravitational fields around black holes. Its gravity lens could bend light and warp space itself on a small scale. Captain Minji had spent the journey to Haven's Gate, working with her science team to amplify its power. Lens active, she reported, targeting the nearest Vrexian dreadnought. The Vrexian ship, a massive vessel named the Iron Destroyer, finally noticed the small human vessel approaching. It rotated its weapons toward the Archimedes, preparing to swat it like an annoying fly. They're locking weapons on us, the Archimedes tactical officer called out. Hold steady, Captain Minji said. Wait for it. Wait for it. Now! Activate the lens at full power. Space itself seemed to bend around the Archimedes. The gravity lens created a localized distortion in space-time, a bubble of warped reality around the ship. When the Vrexian dreadnought fired its plasma cannons, something impossible happened. The beams curved. Instead of hitting the Archimedes, they bent around it, following the curves of warped space-time. Some beams circled completely around and headed back toward the Vrexian ship. Others shot off at wild angles, hitting nothing but empty space. On the Iron Destroyer's bridge, alarms blared. The weapons officer stared at his screens in disbelief. Commander, our weapons are missing. The beams are being deflected by some kind of spatial distortion. The Vrexian captain growled. Impossible. Increase power. Fire again. They fired. The same thing happened. Every beam, every missile, every projectile curved around the small human ship as if it were inside an invisible sphere. Throughout the Vrexian fleet, commanders began paying attention. In the observation posts, council species stopped what they were doing and stared at their sensors. The Korthan analysts couldn't believe what they were seeing. Did that human ship just bend space? Solara whispered. That's not a weapon, that's advanced physics. Admiral Taeyang watched the confusion spreading through the Vrexian fleet. Their formations started to shift, ships turning to face the human vessels. Good. They were no longer ignoring the little fleet. All ships, he said calmly. Weapons free. Let's teach them about science. The battle for Haven's Gate was about to begin, and the Vrexians were about to learn that the humans hadn't brought 12 science ships to the fight. They'd brought 12 laboratories, and every experiment was about to go live. The Newton fired second. Lieutenant Sora had worked for 3 years on the ship's particle accelerator, a device built to study exotic particles near the speed of light. Now, under Dr. Hyun's guidance, she'd modified it into something the galaxy had never seen before. Target locked, she called out. Firing main accelerator. A beam of particles, accelerated to 99% of light speed, shot from the Newton. But these weren't ordinary particles. They'd been placed in a quantum state, existing in a superposition between matter and energy. To normal sensors, the beam looked weak, barely worth noticing. The beam struck a Vrexian cruiser's shield and passed right through it. The shield didn't fail or break. The particles simply existed in a state where solid matter was permeable. They phased through the shield as if it wasn't there, then struck the ship's hull with relativistic force. Explosions tore through the cruiser's port side. The Vrexian captain screamed orders, but his crew had no answers. How do you defend against a weapon that ignores your defenses? Commander Girok felt his confidence crack. What are they doing? What kind of weapons are these? His tactical officer pulled up data, his claws shaking. Commander, our databases have no record of these weapon types. The physics involved are beyond standard military applications. Then figure it out, Girok roared. We have 300 ships. They have 12. Overwhelm them with numbers. The Vrexian fleet finally responded in force. Dreadnoughts turned their massive cannons toward the human ships. Cruisers launched missiles by the hundreds. The sky filled with fire and death, all aimed at the tiny human fleet. But the humans were already moving. The Hawking, under Captain Doyen's command, activated its quantum field generators. Originally designed to study quantum entanglement across vast distances, the generators now created something different. A field of quantum uncertainty spread out from the ship. Vrexian missiles entered the field and simply stopped working. Their guidance systems couldn't maintain coherent calculations when probability itself became uncertain. Some missiles exploded early. Others forgot their targets. A few spun in circles, their computers unable to decide which direction was which. It's working, Captain Doyen reported, his voice filled with wonder. The quantum decoherence field is disrupting their electronics. They can't process information inside it. Admiral Tai Yang allowed himself a small smile. Maintain the field. All ships, use the Hawking's coverage to advance. The human fleet moved forward under the protection of the quantum field. They didn't move like warships, charging in aggressive formation. Instead, they moved like dancers, each ship covering another, using science to turn aside attacks that should have destroyed them. In the Corthan observation post, Kelmar couldn't speak. His blue skin had turned almost white with shock. Solara was frantically recording everything. They're not fighting like soldiers, she said. They're fighting like scientists. Every move is calculated. Every defense is based on fundamental physics. Kelmar finally found his voice. Alert the council. Tell them the humans are winning. Winning? Against 300 Vrexian ships? Look at the sensors! The Vrexians are in chaos! It was true. The Vrexian fleet, so confident minutes ago, was now in disarray. Their weapons didn't work right. Their shields were useless. Their sensors showed impossible readings, and the 12 human ships kept coming, each one revealing new tricks. The Galileo released what looked like simple electromagnetic pulse mines. Every species knew about EMPs. They were old technology, barely worth using in modern warfare. But Dr. Nari had modified them, adding her knowledge of neural biology to the physics. When the mines detonated, they didn't just shut down electronics. They sent cascading waves of electromagnetic interference specifically tuned to Vrexian brain patterns. Vrexian crews across multiple ships suddenly felt dizzy and confused. Some collapsed. Others couldn't focus their eyes. It's not a weapon, Dr. Nari explained to her crew. It's applied neurobiology. I studied Vrexian neural structures for my thesis. Their brains process information using specific electromagnetic frequencies. We're just introducing noise on those frequencies. A Vrexian destroyer drifted out of formation, its crew too disoriented to function. 2 others collided, their pilots unable to coordinate. The Vrexian fleet's perfect military formation crumbled into chaos. Commander Girok watched his fleet falling apart and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. Real, genuine fear. The humans weren't using superior firepower, they were using superior knowledge. Every human weapon exploited some fundamental law of physics or biology that the Vrexians barely understood. All ships, fall back to defensive positions, he ordered. Protect the flagship. But the humans weren't targeting the flagship. Admiral Tai Yang had a different plan. Captain Hana, coordinate all ships for the synchronization maneuver. It's time to show them what 12 ships can do when they work together. Hana's fingers flew across her console. Synchronization network active. All ships report ready. Execute, Taeyang said simply. The 12 human ships scattered across the battlefield suddenly aligned their movements with perfect precision. It was a maneuver they'd practiced during peaceful research missions, using it to create large-scale sensor networks. Now they used it for something else. Each ship activated its gravity lens simultaneously. 12 points of warped space-time, all coordinated, all working together. The combined effect was staggering. They created an artificial gravity well around Commander Gierok's flagship, the Conqueror's Fang. Space itself warped, time dilated. From inside the gravity well, everything seemed normal to the Vrexian crew, but to the rest of the universe, the flagship appeared to freeze. It was trapped in a bubble of compressed time, where seconds inside lasted minutes outside. "What have you done?" Gierok screamed into his communications. But his words took forever to reach the rest of his fleet, stretched out by time dilation. The Vrexian fleet panicked. Their commander was trapped. Their weapons were useless. These tiny human ships were tearing through their formations, using science like a sword. On Haven's Gate, the colonists watched through their view screens in awe. The orbital bombardment had stopped. The Vrexian fleet was in full retreat, some ships fleeing to the outer system, others trying desperately to free their flagship. General Jiho, leading the colony's small ground force, couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Those are research ships," he said to his second-in-command. "Research ships are saving us." Back on the Discovery, Dr. Hyun was already analyzing the battle data. "Admiral, the Vrexians are accessing our ship databases. They're trying to figure out what we did." "Let them look," Taeyang said. "Hana, open a channel to the Vrexian fleet." Captain Hana opened all frequencies. Taeyang's voice broadcast to every Vrexian ship, to every council observer, to everyone watching the battle. "This is Admiral Taeyang of Earth. You called us insects. You mocked our fleet because it was small and built for science. But you made a mistake. You thought science was weak. You thought curiosity was a disadvantage. You built your empire on weapons of war. But we built our civilization on understanding the universe itself." He paused, looking at his crew. Young scientists who had become warriors without losing their love of knowledge. "Every weapon we use today was once a tool for learning. Our gravity lenses studied black holes. Our particle accelerators explored the nature of matter. Our quantum generators researched the fundamental structure of reality. When you forced us to fight, we didn't build new weapons. We simply pointed our research tools at you." In the observation posts, Council species listened in stunned silence. Some were recording every word. Others were already composing reports that would change galactic politics forever. "You wanted to know the difference between warriors and scientists?" Taeyang continued. "Warriors learn to use weapons that already exist. Scientists learn to reshape reality itself. That's why you lost today. Not because we were stronger, but because we understood more." Commander Gierok, finally free from the time dilation field, heard those words. His pride demanded he respond, but his tactical training told him the truth. He'd lost. Not just the battle, but something more important. He'd lost the certainty that military might was the ultimate power in the galaxy. The Vrexian fleet continued its retreat. The 12 human ships held their positions, protecting Haven's Gate, and across Council space a new understanding began to spread. The humans, small and young in galactic terms, had just redefined what power meant. They hadn't won through force, they'd won through knowledge, and that changed everything. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Taeyang sat in the conference room of Haven's Gate's orbital station. The room was crowded. Colony representatives, council observers, and even a few Vrexian officers filled every seat. The atmosphere was tense, but no longer hostile. Captain Hana stood beside Taeyang, reviewing her data pad. The Council's main battle fleet started arriving this morning. The Korthan Admiral wants to speak with you. So do about 50 other people. Taeyang nodded tiredly. He hadn't slept much since the battle. His 12 ships had remained on alert, protecting the colony until reinforcements arrived. Now the system was filled with hundreds of Council warships, all arriving too late to help but just in time to witness something extraordinary. The door opened and Commander Girok entered. The massive Rexian warrior had to duck to fit through the human-sized doorway. His scales looked duller than before, and he carried no weapons. 2 human security officers watched him carefully, but Girok ignored them. His eyes focused on Taeyang. "Admiral," Girok said in the common language, "I have come to request formal terms of peace." Murmurs spread through the room. A Rexian commander didn't request peace. They demanded it or fought to the death. But Girok seemed different now, humbled perhaps, or simply wiser. Taeyang gestured to an empty seat. "Please, sit." Girok lowered himself carefully onto a reinforced chair. "I have spent 3 days reviewing the battle recordings. My officers and I have analyzed every action your fleet took. We have tried to understand what happened." "And what did you learn?" Taeyang asked. "That we are fools," Girok said bluntly. "For 300 years, the Vrexian Dominion has built bigger ships, stronger weapons, and more powerful shields. We thought this made us mighty. But you defeated us with tools designed to study the stars. You taught us that understanding the universe is more powerful than dominating it." Dr. Hyun, who had been invited to the meeting, leaned forward with interest. "You accessed our ship databases during the battle. What did you find?" Girok's expression showed something like embarrassment. "Your weapons weren't weapons at all. Your gravity lenses were research equipment. Your particle accelerators were laboratory tools. Your quantum generators were computing devices. Everything you used against us was designed for science, not war." "That's correct," Dr. Hyun said. "We're a research fleet. We were studying black holes and quantum physics when we received the call for help." "How?" Girok asked, his voice almost pleading. "How did you turn research tools into weapons so effective that they crushed a military fleet 300 times your size?" Taeyang looked around the room at all the watching faces. Council observers, diplomats, military officers from a dozen species. They all wanted to hear the answer to that question. "Because we understand the fundamental laws of the universe," Taeyang said simply. "You build weapons that use physics. We study physics itself. When we needed to defend ourselves, we didn't need to invent new weapons. We just needed to apply what we already knew in new ways." Captain Minji of the Archimedes spoke up from her seat. "The gravity lens wasn't designed to be a weapon. It was designed to observe how gravity behaves near black holes. But gravity is gravity, whether you're studying it or using it for defense. The physics don't change." Lieutenant Sora added, "My particle accelerator was built to study exotic particles, but a particle moving at near light speed carries enormous energy. That's just physics. Understanding the energy is what let us use it." Around the room, the observers were recording everything. Captain Hana noticed the Korthan observers seemed especially interested. She'd learned that the Korthans valued wisdom and knowledge. This conversation would spread across their empire within hours. Girok listened to each explanation, his posture shifting. The proud warrior who had entered the room was disappearing, replaced by something else. A student, perhaps. "My species has fought wars for thousands of years," Girok said quietly. "We have perfected the art of battle. We know tactics, strategy, and the proper use of force. But in all that time, we never learned what you humans seem to know instinctively. We never learned that true power comes from understanding, not from destroying." "It's not too late to learn," Taeyang said. "That's why we're sharing our data with you." Silence fell over the room. The Korthan observer Kelmar stood up quickly. "You're sharing your weapon data? With the Vrexians? Tae-Yang turned to face him. We're sharing our scientific data. The weapons were just applications of that science. Anyone can learn it. But they attacked you, another observer protested. They tried to kill your people. Why would you share knowledge with them? Dr. Hyun smiled. Because that's what scientists do. We share knowledge. We publish papers. We teach others. The entire foundation of human science is built on the idea that knowledge should be free. When one person learns something new, they share it so everyone can benefit. Captain Hana pulled up a holographic display. We've already transmitted the complete schematics of every system we used in the battle. The gravity lens calculations, the particle accelerator modifications, the quantum field generator theory. It's all available on open channels. The room erupted in shocked voices. Military officers looked horrified. Sharing weapon designs with potential enemies violated every rule of warfare. But the human crew members simply looked calm. This was normal to them. Ambassador Young-soo, who had been watching quietly from the back of the room, stood and walked to the front. The humans are not a military species, she explained. We are a scientific species. For us, the greatest victory is not defeating an enemy. It's turning an enemy into a colleague, someone we can learn from and teach. Girok stared at the holographic data now floating in the center of the room. Equations, diagrams, and detailed explanations of every system the humans had used. More than enough information for any species to replicate their weapons. Why? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. We would have destroyed your people. We showed you no mercy. Why do you show us this kindness? Tae-Yang stood and walked over to the Vrexian commander. Even standing, Tae-Yang barely reached Girok's chest. But somehow, in that moment, the human admiral seemed larger. Because war is a failure of understanding, Tae-Yang said. You attacked because you thought military might was the only power that mattered. You were wrong, and now you know it. If we keep our knowledge secret, you'll just try to build bigger weapons to beat us. But if we share our knowledge, you might learn to value understanding over force. That's the victory we want. Not dead enemies, but new friends. Dr. Nari approached with her datapad. Commander Girok, I studied Vrexian neurobiology for years. I know your species values honor and strength. What if I told you that the greatest strength is the ability to learn, to change, to admit when you were wrong and choose a better path? Girok was quiet for a long moment. Around the room, everyone waited. Finally, the Vrexian commander bowed his head, a gesture of deep respect in his culture. I came here expecting to surrender to superior force, he said. Instead, I find myself surrendering to superior wisdom. The Vrexian Dominion will accept peace, and if you will permit it, we would like to learn from you. Not how to build weapons, but how to understand the universe as you do. Tae-Yang extended his hand. Knowledge is meant to be shared. Welcome to the community of learners. Girok carefully took the human's small hand in his massive claw and shook it gently. The watching council observers marked the moment. This was history being made. Captain Hana checked her communications. Admiral, we're receiving requests from 17 different species. They all want access to our research data. The Korthans are asking if we'll establish an exchange program. The Melkari want to send scientists to study with us. Tae-Yang smiled. Tell them all yes. Science has no borders, no restrictions. Anyone who wants to learn is welcome. Dr. Hyun was already working on his datapad, composing what would become the most famous scientific paper in galactic history. Its title would be simple: The Weaponization of Curiosity, How Understanding Defeats Force. But that paper would come later. For now, in a conference room on a small orbital station, the galaxy was learning a new lesson. The humans had shown that the greatest weapon wasn't built in a factory, it was built in a classroom, in a laboratory, In the curious mind of someone asking why and how, the battle for Haven's Gate was over. But the real victory was just beginning. 50 years had passed since the Battle of Haven's Gate. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted when those 12 small ships first dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Admiral Taeyang was much older now, his hair completely white. He walked slowly through the halls of the Galactic Institute of Sciences, leaning on a cane. The institute occupied an entire station, larger than most cities, orbiting a beautiful blue star. Students from every council species filled its corridors. Vrexians studied beside Korthans. Melkari shared labs with humans. Young minds from 17 different worlds learned together. Captain Hana walked beside him. She was an admiral herself now, though she'd never commanded a military fleet. Instead, she led the Institute's research division, overseeing thousands of scientists working on projects that push the boundaries of knowledge. "The ceremony starts in an hour," she reminded him gently. Taeyang nodded. "I know. Let me walk a bit more. I like seeing them." They passed a classroom where Dr. Hyun, now very old but still teaching, explained quantum mechanics to a mixed group of students. His voice was the same as always, patient and excited about the wonders of physics. In another lab, Dr. Nari worked with young Vrexian biologists, mapping the neural structures of newly discovered species. The Institute had been founded 5 years after the battle. What started as a simple human proposal had grown into the most powerful organization in council space. Not powerful in the military sense, but powerful in the way that mattered. The Institute shaped how the galaxy thought, how it solved problems, and how it viewed the universe. Captain Minji approached them in the hallway. She was a professor now, teaching advanced gravitational physics. "Admiral Taeyang, they're ready for you in the main hall." The main hall was enormous, designed to hold 10,000 people. Today, it was packed. Representatives from every council species sat in designated sections. At the front, preserved behind transparent shields, were artifacts from that famous battle. A piece of the Archimedes' gravity lens, a section of the Newton's particle accelerator, small pieces of all 12 ships. But the 12 ships themselves weren't here. They still existed, still flew, still explored the galaxy. That had been Taeyang's decision. "They're not museum pieces," he'd said years ago. "They're working research vessels. Let them keep doing what they were built for." Taeyang walked to the podium with Hana's support. The crowd fell silent. Humans, Vrexians, Korthans, Melkari, and 13 other species all waited to hear from the man who had changed everything. 50 years ago, Taeyang began, his voice still strong despite his age, the galaxy learned a lesson about power. It wasn't the lesson we intended to teach. We were just trying to save lives. But sometimes the most important lessons come from unexpected places. He looked around the hall at the young faces. So many students who had never known a galaxy where science wasn't valued above military might. When we arrived at Haven's Gate with our 12 research ships, the Vrexians laughed. They called us the Little Fleet. They thought we were weak because we chose to explore instead of conquer. They measured power in tonnage and firepower. They were wrong. In the audience, an old Vrexian sat in the front row. Commander Girok was ancient now, his scales faded and scarred, but his eyes were bright with understanding. Next to him sat his daughter, a brilliant physicist who had graduated top of her class from the Institute. "True power," Taeyang continued, "comes from understanding. When you understand gravity, you can bend space. When you understand particles, you can manipulate matter. When you understand the fundamental laws of reality, you can reshape it. Not to destroy, but to protect. Not to conquer, but to explore." He paused, remembering those desperate days. "We didn't set out to create weapons. We set out to answer questions. How does gravity work near a black hole? What happens to particles at near-light speeds? Can we manipulate quantum states? These were scientific questions. But when we needed to defend innocent lives, our knowledge became our strength. Lieutenant Sora, now a senior weapons designer for the Institute's Defense Division, listened from the side of the hall. She remembered being terrified, barely out of university, firing weapons she'd helped modify from research equipment. Now she taught the next generation how to think about defense not as destruction, but as applied physics. "The galaxy has changed," Taeyang said. "Wars are rare now, not because we've become pacifists, but because we've learned to value knowledge over territory. When understanding is the measure of power, sharing that understanding makes everyone stronger, not weaker." Ambassador Young-Soo, also aged but still sharp, smiled from her seat. She had watched the transformation of galactic politics over 5 decades. The old empires based on military might had slowly given way to collaborations based on scientific achievement. The most respected species weren't the ones with the biggest fleets, but the ones who contributed the most to universal knowledge. "Today we dedicate this hall to the memory of those 12 ships," Taeyang said. The Archimedes, Newton, Hawking, Einstein, Galileo, Curie, and the others. They were built to explore black holes and study stars. Instead, they taught the galaxy that curiosity is stronger than force, that understanding defeats ignorance, and that the greatest weapon humanity ever created was the simple question, why? The hall erupted in applause, not just polite ceremony applause, but genuine appreciation. These people, young and old, human and alien, understood what Taeyang was saying because they lived it every day. Dr. Hyun stood at his seat, his old bones protesting. "We should also remember the real lesson," he called out, his voice carrying through the hall. "Science isn't about being better than others. It's about making everyone better together. When we shared our data with the Vrexians after the battle, people thought we were crazy. But look at what happened." He gestured to the Vrexian section where dozens of Vrexian scientists sat. "Some of our best researchers come from the Vrexian Dominion now. They took their dedication to discipline and honor and applied it to science instead of war. They're not our former enemies. They're our colleagues and friends." Commander Girok stood slowly, his great bulk rising. "Dr. Hyun speaks truth. 50 years ago, I would have died rather than admit weakness. Now I teach my grandchildren that asking for help is the greatest strength. The humans defeated us not by destroying our ships, but by destroying our ignorance. For that, I will be forever grateful." Captain Doyen, who had maintained the Institute's Quantum Research Division, activated a holographic display. Images appeared above the crowd. Scientists from different species working together in labs, research vessels from multiple civilizations exploring distant nebulae, children from a dozen worlds learning mathematics together. "This is the real victory," Doyen said. "Not 12 ships defeating 300, but thousands of minds working together to understand the universe. That's the legacy of the little fleet." Taeyang felt tears on his cheeks. He wasn't ashamed of them. This moment, seeing the galaxy he'd helped create, was worth every difficult decision he'd made 50 years ago. "In conclusion," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I want to leave you with this thought. The Vrexians mocked our little fleet because they measured it wrong. They counted ships and weapons. They should have counted ideas and understanding. They saw 12 small vessels. They should have seen 12 laboratories full of knowledge. They thought science was weak. They learned that science is the foundation of all true strength." He looked directly at the young students filling the hall. "You are the inheritors of that lesson. Each of you, regardless of your species, carries forward the mission of those 12 ships, not to fight wars, but to answer questions, not to conquer space, but to understand it, and in understanding it, to protect all life that exists within it." The ceremony continued for another hour. Speakers from various species shared their perspectives on how the Battle of Haven's Gate had changed their worlds. The Corthan ambassador spoke about how her people had shifted from military expansion to scientific exploration. A Melkari professor discussed how the battle had inspired an entire generation to pursue physics instead of warfare. But Taiyang slipped out quietly before the end. He was tired, and he'd said what he needed to say. Hana walked with him to the observation deck, a quiet place where they could watch the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" Hana asked softly. "Taking 12 research ships against 300 warships? We could have all died." Taiyang smiled. "I regret nothing. We did what we had to do, and we did it the only way we knew how. With science, with knowledge, with the belief that understanding is stronger than force." Far below them, on one of the Institute's landing pads, a ship was preparing for departure. It was the Discovery, Taiyang's old flagship. Upgraded and maintained, it still served as a research vessel. A new crew was taking it out to study a recently discovered anomaly at the edge of Council space. "The ships still fly," Hana observed. "As they should," Taiyang replied. "They weren't built for one battle. They were built to explore forever. That's what they'll do." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the Discovery lift off and accelerate toward the stars. Somewhere out there, the other 11 ships were doing the same thing, exploring, learning, asking questions. Doing what humans did best. Taiyang thought about that day 50 years ago when everyone had mocked the little fleet. They'd seen weakness, they'd seen foolishness, they'd seen scientists pretending to be warriors. They'd been looking at it all wrong. The humans weren't scientists pretending to be warriors. They were scientists being exactly what they'd always been. Curious, innovative, determined to understand the universe and everyone in it. And that, Taiyang realized as he watched the stars, had been the greatest weapon of all. Not the gravity lenses or the particle accelerators or the quantum generators. The greatest weapon was the human refusal to stop asking questions, to stop learning, to stop believing that knowledge could save lives. 50 years later, the galaxy finally understood. The little fleet hadn't been little at all. It had been enormous in the ways that truly mattered, and the universe was better for it.